Oh hi, it's your old buddy Zoo, and today we're doing a quick first look on the RG477V. If that name sounds familiar, it's because Anbernic already launched the 477M earlier in the year, and then they also had the 476H and the RG Slide, and they all shared this same beautiful screen. It's a beautiful 4.7-inch 4x3 screen, which means it's perfect for retro games, which is really the point of this video. Actual retro gaming. We're going to go over a lot of what makes the RG477V here unique, but I'm also using this video as an excuse to wax poetic about this beautiful screen. Sound interesting? Then stay tuned. Not your cup of tea? Then who cares? Go watch someone else. Go watch a review where someone's going to complain that PSP on here has too much letterboxing. Although honestly, PSP on here is actually pretty good. Anywho, we've already reviewed this same Dimensity 8300 chipset in here, and we know it can dominate anything up to PS2. It has surprising PS3 performance, but it kind of craps out with Switch due to a lack of custom drivers. And that's fine, because this screen isn't meant for Switch games. It's meant for anything from Atari through GameCube, and it excels at that. As far as the rest of the specs, we got Android 14 on here. You have two purchase models, one with 8 gigabytes of RAM and 128 gigs of storage, and one with 12 gigabytes of RAM and 256 gigs of storage. I have the 12256 model here, and it's honestly the one I would recommend. If you do end up dipping your toes into Steam games on here through GameHub, that extra RAM and especially the extra onboard storage is going to come in clutch. This has dual Hall effect sticks, Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth, USB-C with fast charging and DisplayPort out, and it has a 5500 milliamp hour battery, which, based on prior experience with this chip and this screen, it should get you anywhere from 4 to 6 hours, depending on how much you're pushing it. So you'll have like 6 hours of Super Nintendo before your battery becomes annihilated. Speaking of pushing it, this thing had some weird as hell performance scores in 3D Mark when it first came out. Stubbs and Russ and Rob all confirmed that this thing was throttling down hard after a few cycles of testing, which would have meant random performance drops after you were playing this for a while. I used past tense there because Anbernic already pushed out an OTA update that eliminated that problem. It wouldn't be an Anbernic Android release without at least one confusing and then quickly rectified Android build issue. One last thing before we take our device tour is the price. There are two configurations, so 2 price points, but it's also Anbernic, so there's early bird prices. So in the first 72 hours, I guess that's from December 20th to the 23rd, you can get the 8 gigabyte model for $200 and the 12 gigabyte one for $240. From Christmas Eve until the next Anbernic fire sale, the price bumps up to $220 for the 8 and $260 for the 12. Now this device isn't a budget model, but those prices aren't too far off of what the 556 and the 477M sold for. So all in all, not too bad. If you don't make the pre-order sale and you can wait for the next fire sale, I would do that though. No use in spending an extra $20 if you don't need to. All right, let's take a quick tour of this device. On your front, you have your D-pad, your face buttons, 2 sticks, start and select, and a \home button. On the side here, you have your SD card slot, and it's very, very flush. Are you getting that? It's very flush, so it doesn't jut out. You have your Anbernic button that brings up their front end. On this side, you have a power button, volume up, volume down. On top, you have a single USB port. On the bottom, 2 downward firing speakers and a headphone jack on the bottom. I like that. On the back, you have some very basic shoulder buttons. You'll notice, not super loud. I like that. And then you have the fan. This thing hasn't gotten nearly as loud as the one in the 477M, and it doesn't whine either. So nice subtle improvement along the line there, Max. I appreciate that. Going back to the controls, this D-pad is really precise. You can see I got to really rock it to get him to pivot. But on the other hand, I was able to roll off blitz moves in Final Fantasy III with relative ease. It is a high quality, typical Anbernic D-pad. The buttons are all fine, albeit they're a little bit loud in a quiet room. The sticks on here are recessed just enough so you don't have them jutting out, but you also get a really good range of movement. Start and select on here are LED lights, which is kind of cool. You can toggle them off and on if you want, just like the RGB lights around the sticks, which again is kind of cool if you like RGB lighting. The triggers and the shoulders are fine, and it has a classic DMG style back here. You'll also notice that this is an all-glass front. It looks premium, but I really don't like this trend. First of all, the long-term durability of these types of devices always worries me. I dropped my 477M in our hotel room in New York a couple weeks ago, and it was a hard enough fall to dent the aluminum, but the thing still works fine because it's a metal case. I worry that that same kind of fall would have cracked or shattered the screen on the 477V here. Secondly, this thing is a smudge magnet. Just filming this is kind of a massive pain. I'm constantly wiping it down every minute or two. But even playing it normally is kind of a struggle. Maybe I just have greasy paws, but I find myself cleaning this off a lot. Maybe if you got the Game Boy DMG model instead of the all black one, it wouldn't be as bad, but I don't know. It's very smudgy. Let's compare this real quick to the 406V, and you see obviously a different screen size. Look at how much these sticks jut out compared to the sticks on this one. This is much more pocketable, much more, I don't know, aesthetically pleasing. The other thing you'll notice on this is butt doots. The 406V has some thick butt doots. The 477V doesn't. Get out of here, 406. Now, normally, I'd complain about the lack of butt doots, but I don't know. I've been mainlining this for the last 2 or 3 days since it showed up, and I haven't had a single ergonomic issue with it. I'll probably mail this to my pals over at JC Studios so they can scan it for future grip and case options, but again, it's pretty solid as it is. Oh yeah, the case. Mine shipped with one, and it's maybe the worst case Anbernic has ever sold. The device barely fits inside, and you can press the buttons just tapping on the case. God knows what I did. I'm in RetroArch settings somehow. Get out of there. I mean, I guess it does the primary job of protecting the screen, which is good, but otherwise, just find something else. Yeah. Well, there goes the stick. Speaking of sticks, like that one that just flew away, it's the same kind of post that works on third-party sticks, like Hype Sticks here. I'm gonna go ahead and pass though, because I actually like the stick covers on here. If I can get it back on. There we go. Anyway, let's get to the meat of this video, the 4.7-inch screen. It's the same screen that was in the 477M and the RG slide. It's a beautiful 4.7-inch LTPS screen, and it doesn't suffer from any PWM flickering like we've seen in the past. It has a resolution of 1280 by 960, which is 4:3, and it has a refresh rate of 120 Hertz. My sometimes pal Russell Decor has done videos on black frame insertion, and I'll drop a link in the description, but the too long didn't read is that if a game runs at 60 FPS and you have a 120 Hertz panel, you can sneak in some effects every other frame that'll make retro games look amazing and authentic without losing any FPS. I actually have it turned off for most of the filming because I'm using an old cell phone and it makes the screen look kind of funky, but in person, it is a sight to behold. So yeah, this is an amazing 4:3 screen, and it's honestly my favorite 4:3 screen out there, at least so far. And that's great because I love retro games. Stuff from the NES all the way through PlayStation 2 and GameCube. Stuff that was explicitly designed for your old 4:3 boob tube. Fun fact, they called it that because even parents in the 50s were worried about screen time. And sure, there are a ton of great widescreen devices, and they excel at 16:9 content or streaming. And some of them, like the Odin 2 Portal, are just big enough to give you almost 5 inches of 4:3 content just because they're so massive to begin with. I don't know though, I think the widescreen devices always seem like kind of a mismatch with the games that I love to emulate. And when you force those games onto a 16:9 screen, one of 3 things happens. The image gets stretched, you get massive black bars and letterboxing, or you have to apply hacks that are going to distort the pixels anyway. And yeah, you can fix some of this with settings, but at a certain point, it's like you're fighting the hardware instead of enjoying the game. And honestly, that's where the RG477V and its 4.7-inch friends immediately make sense. Because this device has a giant native 4:3 display, it means correct geometry, no stretching, no guessing, and honestly, no compromises. Sprites look the way they were drawn. Text is crisp. Circles are actually circles. It just feels right. And out of the box, with no shaders, it's still amazing. It's like a time machine that takes me to all the games I used to play back in the day. And it's not like I encounter them and I'm like, oh, that's a blurry mess. Like, you always have an idealized memory of the 80s and the 90s, right? But this high resolution screen, it shows you the games not as they were, but more as you thought you remembered them. It elevates the game. And because this 4x3 screen is also an LTPS IPS, you get excellent brightness, strong viewing angles, and super fast pixel refresh. This isn't just good for retro, it's overkill for retro in the best way. It gets bright enough that you can play it outside, but I'd stick to the shade. Don't take it on the beach at noon without an umbrella, but it also gets super, super dim. Like, is the camera even picking that up? This is really, really good to play in a dark room, like while you're in bed. And let's talk real quick about that 120 hertz refresh rate, because it's not just marketing fluff. For retro games, a 120 hertz screen is going to give you smoother scrolling, better frame pacing, reduced perceived input latency, which is a thing people always complain about. And all of these advantages can be optimized by running emulators that can either match the 120 hertz speed or by taking advantage of doubling the 60 hertz that these games normally ran at, like with black frame insertion. But even if we took black frame insertion out and just ran it from stock, you'd still notice how smooth it was. And that's because even though most retro games are 60 hertz, running them on a 120 hertz panel feels better. Your motion clarity improves. Your scrolling, like this text scrolling, it looks cleaner. And shaders behave more predictably. This is one of those things you don't really notice until you go back to a 60 hertz screen, and then it's kind of hard to unsee. And because this chipset is so powerful, you can also run a ton of shaders, even the resource-intensive ones. You can grab CRT Consumer NTSC right out of the box, and it looks amazing. Get out of my way. Jerks. Leave me alone. And you can always make tweaks. I think I actually reduced some of the curvature because it was a little bit extreme right out of the box. Or you could even combine multiple different effects and tinker with these until you have like a 6 filter long retro heaven CRT shader. And that's because you're not hiding a widescreen problem, you are recreating an authentic CRT presentation. And the games, when you have these filters and these shaders on, to me at least, they start to feel right. Shimon, hey! Hey! Honestly, I made a joke about it earlier, but PSP on here, it's actually not bad. The screen, the effective screen you see, you got letterboxing on the top and the bottom, but your effective screen, I'm pretty sure it's the same exact size as the screen on the original PSP. It has letterboxing, but it still looks good. Also, letterboxing, not the end of the world, but if you're going to play this stretched at 4x3, you're an enemy of the state and you should be hunted down. I feel kind of unique in this space because I actually play retro games. I've finished every Game of the Month game for like 3 years in a row now. And the difference is most of my buddies in this space, they play a ton of newer games. I think I've shamed Andrew and Rob into doing Game of the Month, and I've gotten Stubbs and Ban to finish a few games here and there. But these old games are my jam. I play them every day. And maybe that's why I fell in love with this screen. They take all of my 4x3 games and even 3x2 for Game Boy Advance or 1-to-1 like Game Boy. And this screen makes them all look amazing. So I guess the key takeaways from the showcase are, this device isn't struggling at all. The frame pacing is smooth, the input feels responsive, and everything looks clean without feeling over-processed. It just feels and looks right. So who is the RG477V actually for? This is for people who actually play retro games, people who are nostalgic for the old CRT look, but not the CRT price, and really anyone tired of fighting aspect ratios on a widescreen device when they just want to play an old Super Nintendo game. if you want ultra-wide hacks or modern AAA games, this ain't for you. This is for playing retro games the way they were designed, but with modern screen technology making them look better than ever. And that's why I would honestly rate the predecessor, the 477M, as one of my top 3 handhelds of the year, and the 477V here is more of the same, just in a vertical form factor. Well, Gary, the clock on the wall says it's time for What Did We Learn? And we learned that if you want high-resolution 4x3 gaming with a silky smooth 120Hz refresh rate and shaders that actually enhance your gaming instead of distracting you from letterboxing, then the Anbernic RG477V is absolutely worth your attention. If you hate vertical devices, then check out the 477M or the 476H. But man, this screen is amazing. This handheld is actually quite amazing, and I love it. If you love this video, then remember to like and subscribe and all that jazz. And let me know in the comments, are you team 4x3 or are you still rocking widescreen? Thanks for watching, Merry Christmas, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.